Hello everyone, this is Bradley. Today this is a voiced recording to make a visual effects. I don't know how to describe that, but it's whatever. I don't know. Since this is a voiced recording, I don't know the end product you will look at. And I guess this recording won't cover every part that you see, because the overall effect will be very complicated, containing many different pieces. But anyway, we will try. So let's start. So here in Blender, as always, I'm going to use presets, which you can download for free from the link in the description. So where do we start? Let me firstly start with different instances of this kind of fires from the ground. I think it will be a good start. So let's start with a curvilinear bevel curve. This is actually basically the fire workflow I was shown to you, and I'm going to uncenter that. And then let's store UV map, and let's set a shader. So take a set material. And within shader editor, we will see that we have a UV map, and by subtract 0.5, I expect that our gradient texture of a sphere shape will go to the middle, and it will be more shown as we are increasing this scale of this UV. And then we can try to map that a little bit so that yeah, maybe we do not need to subtract the ends, and then play around with this multiply. We multiply 111, and maybe increasing or decreasing certain values, then we get this result. Let's increasing the curvilinear a little bit, make it a little bit wider, and yes, a little bit tall. Then we're going to add some noise, and basically that's the same as we discussed in the fire tutorial, that we take a noise texture and we just add these values. Let's denormalize that and scale this noise texture. Sometimes you can also multiply with a difference noise scale. It's really just the parameter things. Sometimes you want the fire to look more or less. But yeah, basically this is kind of idea. I think this is fine. And then we can use an add to move this noise. By moving onto the x-axis, you can see this effect. So we take a combine XYZ, and we take an attribute, copy data path, we get a frame currents data, and we just divide it by -25 to the x-axis. So there will be an animation if it goes to view layer. Then we have this fire going on. I'm not sure if this is for what I want in this particular case, but yeah, this is the basic setup for a fire. Once we finish that, sometimes it might be easier to discuss the way to animate it. But it's actually very simple. You either just move that button or top, or sometimes what can also happen is that you scale more or less. I think yeah, I think this is probably it. So let's take a transparent BSDF. We need a mixed shader. And I need emission shader. Let's take a alpha blend mode and the color ramp kit to make the alpha quite sharp. And then we can tweak this kind of middle into a fire, make that yellow, make that into the orange, make one into the red. Yeah, something like that, and increase the strength, change the color management into filmic, increasing emission, turn on the bloom, something like that. So now we have this set up. I'm going to the word shader to decrease the emission so that the entire background will be black in render mode. So something like that. Okay, I think this is fine. It looks like kind of slow, but this is the basic file. Yes. Up to now, most of stuff was taught in my fire tutorials. And let's tweak the value a little bit, just to make sure the fire is covered inside instead of being clipped on the top. Okay, and the next step is basically just to instance this fire. So we take a grid and we point instance on point, and then we take we just input this curve linear so that we have multiple of that. Let's point distribute so that I have multiple points, and I import this new instance the curves into the bevel curve so that everything is being beveled. Let me realize the instance to make that as a whole group. Another thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to store named attributes, which is an instance domain, and it's the index. Once you are using this kind of point distributes or distributes on faces, you will generate a kind of ID attribute already. But I don't really like this ID attribute due to various kind of reasons. It's also possible that you directly use these grid points instead of point distributes. In that case, you will not have this ID attributes. So I would always recommend you just to generate your own stuff in case you change the setup. Okay. So now you have this new index. We're going to put this index into an attribute node. And it may not be too obvious, but these are different files. Yeah, you can see this file looks like that, but the other file looks like that. They are obviously different. And you can change the seeds in whichever way you want, but I will just leave them as it is now. You can also add some randomness into the general height. So let's take a randomness so that I have an average value to control it. I think maybe I will just spread them out. Yeah, I think in this way you can see more clearly about how they are different files because of our seed. And then next step is about how to make this file appear and disappear. I think we are going to do that on shader side. So firstly, let's still store an instance attribute. I'm going to make that into a float. This time, let's make that into, I think the delay for, let's name that as a D. And I'm going to put this delay for, just to give you a sense about how it performs. So if I'm putting this delay for into the scale, and by playing this animation, you can see that it's not very obvious. Let's increase the step size. Then you can see there are different fires going up. Actually, this is already okay. I don't need to work with shaders. Yeah, I think this is already kind of okay. If you want to increase the speed, then you can decrease this duration into maybe 6. Yeah, something like that. Because it contains an ease. Sometimes what you can also do is you can create a kind of bounce effect, so that you have a vector, and then you have this, something like this interpolation. It's tricky. Maybe put that back. Yeah, it's doesn't really look better than what I think. But anyway, try to tweak all this kind of value and the possibilities by your own. But I think this looks cool. I wasn't expecting that. And yeah, basically once you have done that, you can still export these to the shader, because we still need to deal with how are we going to make this fire disappear. I think one way, probably this is not the way. One way, I think, is to subtract this gradient texture. It's okay to use this vector math, because in reality this is actually just a black and white yet. So you may even use this regular subtract math, which is also okay. Or sometimes it might be better if you use this mix subtract, but I don't really see a reason in this particular case. Let's just use the normal subtract, and you can actually see this effect by subtracting more values, then it disappears downwards. But if you subtract it itself, everything disappears. And in this case, what can happen is that if you make this fire going up, then it appears. If you make that the opposite way, I'm not sure if this is actually a good idea. There's another way that you deal with the scale, that's going from a large scale and to smaller scale. Then you can see that it will subtract from the center. This is also a way. And I think another possibility is that you use multiply instead. So only the overlapping geometry of these two coordinates or two textures will be shown. And in this case, let's try with different values. By changing the value, it's still going up and going downwards. What if we're using add math? So let's try. If I'm adding the value, it's still going downwards, but if I'm subtracting value, then it's going upwards. and it's continue going upwards because the second texture will keep moving. So there will be shown and it will be removed. I think this is cool. I think this is what I want. So we can do that. I'm not sure if I still need this for scaling the initial geometry, but let's just try. So if I already have this delay fold, and I just combine X, Y, Z to this vector, and if I play this animation, so it looks like this now. Because this fold is going from 0 to 1, but we need to remap that with other numbers. So I hope 2. Okay, it's going downwards. Can I make 2 to 0? Then we subtract, so it's something like that. If I increase the duration, 25. Oh, I think this is fine then. -2. Okay, I don't see the value, but anyway, I think this is basically fine. Do I need to really animate this? Sometimes I think not to animate this flow of fire is better in this particular case. Otherwise, it feels something is wrong, in my opinion. But it's up to you. It depends on your design. And just to remind you that you can also float curve either in shader or the geometry nodes. They are the same. But yeah, basically, that's yet. Knowing that it's already east, you can disable that, and so that you can remap in a linear fashion or other things. But I think this is okay already. So I will leave it as it is. Next, I think we will move on to another part of this entire animation. So other than this entire fire whatever stuff, let's make that to 100 instances and make the step interval. And let's take the index, randomize, maybe target repeat 4, change the seed. We are on instance, right? Yes, we are on instance. So let's make that onto instance. Oh yes, it's cool. You can increase the end frames. Yes, it looks like something like this. And you can use the ID. Where's my ID? Oh yes, you can use the ID to change many different colors using the hue, contrast, whatever stuff, I think. But I'm not going to do here. Yes, we're going to move on to the next part. So this is a small file. Let's just name that as small. We're going to make a huge file after everything is being finished. So let's start with a new node tree, and I just name that as a huge. Let's create a new material. Let's call it huge. And then we basically start with the same thing that we can start with a curve linear, bevel curve, and curve linear. Sometimes I really wonder that why don't I just use a grid node to replace this full functionality? And honestly, I don't know the answer. It's definitely easier if you use a single node to replace all this kind of function, but I don't know. So once we have this grid, we basically do the same thing. I need a set material nodes, take a huge file, And I think I'm going to repeat basically the exact same process. Right now, this looks like a bin. There is nothing really interesting. So we may add some noise. I think we add noise at this step. I don't really care if you add noise or using mix add or other things. Let's just use the math node. Sometimes if it's a basically black and white image, you can always use math node instead of the mix node. Then we have this UV map. Let's take a vector. They're essentially the same in this case. And then we take a noise texture. Ice. This is also a very interesting question. Can I actually change the vector instead? If I use the vector mask, if I use the color into the vector, if I increase the scale and make that, I'm going to denormalize that so it becomes like this. Let's remove this add, so it finally becomes that. Maybe just increase a little bit, increase or decrease the scale, and then we just trying to change the animation. We see earlier, we combine XYZ, we attribute view layer, copy the path, and then divide by -25. Then you see this effect. And if you put all mixed shaders together, you'll finally have this set up. And yeah, sometimes something like that. We can also color ramp to make the black part a little bit more centered, and maybe decrease the scale. Maybe increase the length, the width. Yeah, something like that. It's also possible that you change the radius, set the curve radius, so that you put the top part to be a little bit thin. Let's reverse that. So it will turns to be like a from thick to thin. Something like that. There are many different possible variations. Yeah, I think this being kind of a structure can be end like this. It depends on what you do. Here I want to remind you that this is a plane, so that if you change the perspective, you will see flaws. But I discussed in the Fire tutorial that if you take a tilt alignment, then you can guide with camera. So if you look at the camera, and you can see it's rotating with your camera, but it does not change the fundamental perspective, which is kind of very nice compared to the regular constraint of track 2. This is a method. And next, let's do the third part, which is also a kind of a stylized tornado. But in the past, when I'm making a tutorial, it was using a geometry, so it has to be very dense. But this time, we're going to do real one using shader, so that there can be more different details. So we still make curvilinear bevel curve, but this time we do not use custom bevel, and I directly store the UV map. If I remove this huge and small into the hide collection, so now I only see this large tornado shape, and make that to be large, radius long. And once we have this UV map, let's add another, and we have this tornado. And here I'm going to take this UV map, and basically we just take a noise texture. I'm only going to look at this factor. Let's multiply it. Sometimes instead of using this factor, let's make that more obvious. Otherwise, I cannot really demonstrate. So we increase the contrast of it. Sometimes instead of using this UV map, because it's definitely stretched as the UV map is not corresponding to the lens, sometimes you can make that into the UV by lens, so that you do not need to really multiply any factor. It's already multiplied inside. So this is a way. It depends on what you really like. But yeah, let's increasing the subdivision a little bit. Since we are working with shader, it's not really important to increase the subdivision, but anyway. And by increasing these values, you can see the flow is up and down. We can also vector rotate. I hope this is, no, this is not the angle which is working. So let's take that to Euler, and doesn't work. We may need a, yes, if we try to stretch this, and then we are rotating that, okay, none of them works. But if we try to, no, it doesn't work. No, it still doesn't work. Okay, now if I rotate on z-axis, then you can see it start to work and distort. And with this add mask, you see this result. So, and basically this is yet you can decrease these details to make it kind of rough. And let's take a still transparent and still mix shader, still emission shader. You realize that if you do not use presets for this kind of a simple operation, it's really time consuming, because it's really dumb, I have to say. You have to call 3 nodes separately. There's really no reason to waste your time. And now if you animate it, you get this kind of result. But it shows the back face, of course. What you can, but if you show your original geometry, then sometimes it's no longer really a problem. So our tornado maybe, it might be easier to be shown as black. Our tornado is kind of small, too small. And where is my darkness? Because it's not being shown anywhere. Okay, it's shown, but it's not being seen. Interesting. Is that because the emission? I'm kind of surprised. Maybe because of the feature of alpha blends. It's interesting because I don't really know that alpha blend cannot be seen with another alpha blend. Interesting. I think this is a eevee limitation. What else I can do? It might be great if you can run through a compositor to make it shown. But anyway, I don't know. There are many different kinds of things that you can potentially think about. But basically, this is the concept. And I think sometimes this is yet. And I think this is the main effect I can discuss. There are many other things I will probably add, but I don't want to discuss them. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll probably see you next time. Bye-bye.